We're thinking I'm already 20 minutes late or more. Probably just a good idea to post on Discord and get on with it. Here, let's see here. There we go. Oh. GameX183. Welcome to stream. Thank you for the follow. What's this? Nice stream. Huge fan of this game. Like to play together with you. Don't mind, add me on Discord. I'm not playing a game right now. Nice try, but no. Oh, I've seen this before. I know about this scam. There was somebody talked about this lately. I forget who it was. I think it was like one of the Street Fighter YouTubers that I watch, where it was like somebody just asked you like, "Hey, do you want to play this game together?" And it's like a mobile game. And it goes into some sort of data harvesting scheme. Like the mobile game is one of those jank ass mobile games that's transparently just like for data harvesting, and then it ends up being like a form of identity theft. So that brings me to an interesting question. Why is it appealing to you to attempt to steal my identity in particular? Because I've seen this scam. These scams are basically one size fits all. They all start the same way. Oh, they left. They're not even here anymore. They dropped that message and then left. Dang, now I kind of want to ask them. Well, that's it for that, I guess. Account created December 15th, 2025. Least obvious scam on the internet. Sick. Created the account 1 day ago. Chatted in my stream. Dropped a follow, so thank you. But seriously, I do gotta ask. Why am I particularly the mark for a identity theft scheme? I wonder. How did they find you? I'm assuming, given that the account was created yesterday, they're probably not a real person. They're probably a bot. And what a lot of bots like that do, you've seen on occasion how those like fake viewer pitches enter my chat, or they're like, buy viewers on this website, just remove the spaces or whatever. Those aren't real people. Or if they are, their accounts have been compromised by some external thing, which is a sort of botting service or whatever. They scrub Twitch to try to find small Twitch channels that are more likely to be easy marks for these kinds of scams. And because there's no such thing as regulation anymore, there's no legal threat of blowback or consequence for them engaging in this. And they use various algorithms or environmental factors in these sort of equations and calculations to essentially pick a streamer out of the hat and go into their chat and basically do a preset string of messages to try to hook them onto this scam. That's also how stuff like the Nigerian Prince email works, is that it comes from these either real compromised or dummy email accounts. And the emails are all pre-written. And all of those like misspellings and really obvious grammar errors are intentional, because if you catch on to those immediately, then they don't want, they're sort of pre-filtering out the marks for the scam, right? Like, An older, more undiscerning person using their email is more likely to fall for a Nigerian prince scam. Um, a more literate person, more internet savvy person, which used to mean young people, but young people are pretty stupid nowadays as well. So like somebody about my age who grew up with the internet, but not in a way that it dominated their lives. People who grew up with the internet, but weren't like iPad and smartphone kids, can see that and instantly detect like, oh yeah, obviously this email's not legit. There's a ton of spelling errors. This is, dumb as hell. Never respond to anything asking you for money. And so that automatically filters out a large number of people that would be paying attention to material like that. This is a similar sort of thing. I'm too smart to fall for it. So by default, I'm actually not even the target audience. There's like, that's the final step of the filtration process. First, they filter for small streams. And then the final step is, are you dumb enough to add them on Discord? At which point they've got you. Or at least they get to go to the next step, right? That's probably how they found me anyways. Anyway, let me see if I can find a link for the first thing I have on my list. I only have a few things on my list, but there's been more things happening. If there's something like major, it's like you activated my stand by clicking on this button. Yeah, kind of. I know there's like more major stuff that's happened. So again, like, I'm going to be relying on chat a little bit more to provide links for that. You know, but for now, I'll start with what I do have. Let's see. This is the Tallahassee Democrat. Let me find the Twitter video. I want to find the Twitter video. Where James Fishback announced his candidacy. Where is it? Did they take it down? I hope they didn't take it down. Maybe I just need to go to his Twitter account. Something went wrong. Whoa, what's going on here? Oh. I was looking for campaign stuff, but this might be bigger if I can corroborate it. Okay. We're gonna do some investigative reporting right now. Newswire says House Speaker Mike Johnson says there will be no vote on, there will not be a vote on the ACA subsidies. So the ACA subsidies are confirmed dead. They've ended up committing to that part of it. But this is Newswire. They're affiliated with the Polymarket. Them alone, they are not a reliable source of information. Though they sometimes post from news outlets that are reliable sources of information, at least insofar as such and such politician said such and such thing. So let me take a minute to see if I can find any corroborating sources, because I'm not going to just go off of Newswire. I'm a better journalist than most American journalists, that's for damn sure. Okay. Okay, here we go. Instant corroboration of this. NBC News. House Republican leaders ditch vote on ACA funding. Politico. Johnson confirms no ACA vote. The Hill. Mike Johnson says House will not vote on Obamacare. CNBC. Key ACA tax credits likely to expire after House Speaker something. Let's take a look at the Hill to get maybe a few more details. I want to make gambling illegal permanently. You and me both, brother. I share this opinion. I think that gambling should be illegal, with the death penalty for people that engage in the vendor side of that. For example, if you are a gambling addict and you've been ensnared in a gambling scheme, gambling is illegal, but the legal punishment does not fall on you for engaging in gambling. Rather, it falls on the people who organize the gambling, essentially, right? So, like, people who are addicted to Polymarket, they're fine. You have committed no crime. However, Polymarket, by offering a place to gamble, has committed a crime and will receive the corporate death penalty. Heads will roll, and so forth. Anyways, ACA subsidies. Apparently, they're not coming back. I made a video segment that unfortunately seems to have aged poorly, or fortunately, given what my analysis is in some accelerationist respects, that Republicans kind of accidentally their way back into the ACA subsidies. But it seems like now they've committed to just not doing the subsidies anymore, which would be really bad. House GOP will not allow amendment vote to extend Obamacare subsidies. Speaker Mike Johnson said there will not be an amendment vote on extending expiring Obamacare enhanced subsidies as part of a House Republican healthcare bill this week, in a move that is infuriating moderate Republicans who had been pushing to go on the record about the subsidies. I guess there were some random Romneyites that still kind of liked the ACA because the ACA is just Romney care. Shout outs to the old heads who were politically cognizant back in 2012. But Obamacare is just Romney's healthcare plan, which they called Romney Care. The Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan presidential ticket, that was their healthcare plan, just rebranded to have Obama's name on it. Johnson said at a press conference Tuesday that about a dozen Republican members in competitive districts are fighting hard to make sure they reduce costs for all of their constituents, which is just typical nothing speak, Many of them did want to vote on this Obamacare COVID-era subsidy the Democrats created. We looked for a way to try to allow that pressure release valve, and it just was not to be. He's lying, of course, because he's the Speaker of the House, and his party controls both the House and the Senate. If there is a will, there is a way. He just didn't have the will because he didn't care. If he wanted to get, an extension for the ACA subsidies, he would get an extension for the ACA subsidies. Understand, the only reason this isn't happening is because the Republican Party doesn't want it to happen. Representative Mike Lawler from New York, one of the members who had been pushing for a vote to extend the subsidies that expired December 31st, fumed at the decision as he emerged from a House Republican conference meeting Tuesday morning. I think it's idiotic not to have an up or down vote on this issue, Lawler said, adding, it is political malpractice. I bet he did this to save his career. Probably. Both from Lawler and Johnson's perspective, they're probably looking out for their careers first and foremost. Mike Johnson is the sort of leader of the far-right Republicans that was a product of like the 2020s sort of far right wave, and is from Louisiana. So it stands to reason that his career would be benefited by being as racist as possible, which means there's a black man's name attached to this right-wing healthcare plan. So I want to destroy it, even though it, like in every other way, is great for my interests. Meanwhile, Mike Lawler is from New York, which is a much more left-leaning state by and large. So it stands to reason that for the sake of his career, he would be sort of willing to engage in the kayfabe that he wanted to extend the ACA subsidies, but the darn Republican leadership was just too mean and wouldn't let them do it. It's entirely possible that if this were to come to a vote, Mike Lawler would have just voted against the subsidies and said, well, yeah, I wanted there to be a vote. I didn't say I'd vote for it. Politicians do this all the time. And even if somehow you could construct a excessively charitable scenario where there were Republicans that authentically really, really wanted to extend these subsidies, the party got its way. They are in the minority insofar as the Republican coalition. I'm pissed for the American people. This is absolute bullshit, Lawler said. Responding to Lawler's comments, Johnson noted he recently campaigned for him in New York and said Lawler fights hard for New York as every Republican in this conference does for their districts. Johnson said, see, he's trying to, he's trying to minimize the amount of infighting this has caused. Trying to like say, well, we're not actually infighting or something like that. Which doesn't necessarily speak to whether there's infighting in the Republican coalition on its own, but we're in a broader context where we know there is a lot of infighting in the Republican Party, and this just kind of adds another piece on top of that. Johnson said members worked on a potential amendment through the weekend, and while everyone was at the table in good faith, an agreement wasn't made. Typo? This is a typo. Who wrote this? You know what? Maybe it was written by a real person and that's how you know. I don't know if AIs like are capable of making these kinds of typos. I know there's like hallucinations and shit. I don't know. Negotiations between moderates and GOP leadership on an amendment to extend the subsidies hit a roadblock over the weekend as GOP leaders and other conservatives said any language extending the expensive subsidies would need to be paired with spending cuts. Oh, so they wanted to cut Medicare and Medicaid in addition to this. I gotcha. Like I said, fascists are just liberals, but worse. This is austerity lib shit. House Rules Committee will meet at 2 p.m. Tuesday. That's right now. This committee is meeting right now as I'm streaming this. I'm still in the same time zone as DC. They're meeting right now, which is really funny that I'm reading this article as that's happening. To tee up the House GOP healthcare bill, dubbed the Lower Healthcare Premiums for All Americans Act, that includes funds to pay for cost-sharing reductions, reforms to the pharmacy benefit manager industry. This is cooked just as a concept. An expansion of association health plans. So basically, the association health plans is like healthcare through your employer. So essentially what this bill is seeking to do, what Republicans are trying to do, is tie healthcare closer and closer to your place of work so that you're even more fucked if you're unemployed. And it enhances the power of the owning class even further to have a grip over the working class. Reforms is pretty vague, but like the fact that the pharmacy benefit manager industry is an industry that exists, understand pharmacy benefit managers are the people who, the middle managers, the middle administrative bureaucrats whose job it is to make sure there's an excess of red tape between you and getting your prescription or like whatever health procedure you need done. Their job is to scrutinize every request anybody has ever made that, yeah, I need this like essential medical treatment, you know? And then say, well, you didn't break your arm hard enough. So actually, this is elective and it's not covered by insurance. They are part of like the medical industrial complex, like the medical insurance industrial complex, whose job it is to maximize the amount of money that comes out of your pocket and that goes into insurance companies and private health vendors. In a normal country, this is not an industry that exists. In European countries that have single payer systems, there's no such thing as a pharmacy benefit manager industry. There might not, I don't think there's even such a thing as a pharmacy benefit manager, because there's not like, because of single payer healthcare, that's not a thing. Your healthcare is all just directly subsidized. There's no room for the insurance company to argue, actually, we don't need to pay for this. In part, this is how they outsource those arguments. They get a middleman to say, no, this isn't covered under this healthcare plan. Lawler said he will make the case for an amendment to extend the subsidies at the Rules Committee hearing. Johnson said he expects all Republicans will unite around the underlying health care bill, which is set to hit the House floor Wednesday, arguing it will reduce costs for all Americans rather than the small percentage of Americans who get health coverage through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. Okay. It might result in lower healthcare costs relative to a world where the ACA and ACA subsidies don't exist. But I don't think that's actually true. Wait, no, actually, this might be true, but it's a dishonest framing of the issue. The ACA marketplace, it is true, not that many people get healthcare from it. As a percentage of, the people who have health insurance, it's like 20-something%, I think, of health coverage, like in terms of how many people have health coverage, are through the ACA marketplace. But the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, has another part of it that applies to everyone, the patient protection part, which universally lowered costs and guaranteed that insurance is slightly more stable, because it's like, yeah, you can't deny people for having pre-existing conditions anymore. Like if somebody has asthma, you can't just refuse to give them insurance. You think they'll try to spin it like, look, the prices are cheaper? Yeah, and I have no doubt that this bill might actually do that, but I'm positive, because of what this like entails, this is going to further entrench the private health insurance industry and funnel even more money into the private health insurance industry, right? Sure, your premiums might go down a little bit relative to if there just weren't any ACA subsidies. But I think I'm yet to see anybody having fully crunched the numbers on this like they did pretty quickly with the lack of ACA subsidies. I think that only changes things from premiums shooting up 3 or 4 times to like 1.5 to 2 times, which is still a significant increase. It's just mitigating how bad the damage is, you know? And of course, that's only a side consideration, because the first and foremost things that they're thinking about is, how do we benefit the insurance companies, right? That's why you would include the expansion of association health plans through your employer, you know? Anyway, the analysis I wanted to get to was that with the ACA subsidies having expired, right? And now with confirmation that they're probably not coming back, America is staring down the barrel of a healthcare crisis. Even a 1.5 to 2 times increase, if the best case scenario unfolds, this bill goes through and it like kind of does something, the best case scenario is 1.5 to 2 times premium increase for most people, I think, because the ACA subsidies aren't going to be there anymore. And the ACA subsidies were fucking huge. Yes, people will be radicalized by this. A lot of young people increasingly are just not getting insurance, are just not buying insurance because think about what insurance is. You pay premiums monthly so that they can have a pool of money available to pay out your claims. And then when you claim like, hey, I've been injured or I got sick and I need this like medicine, this prescription or this procedure, they say no and keep your money and there's nothing you can do about it. And they are legally protected in their authority to do that. They can even break the law and refuse you life-saving treatment. And number one, if they refuse you life-saving treatment, you'd be dead and there's nothing you could do about that because you're dead. But if you somehow live to tell the tale, you have to spend so much time and resources if you want to sue them and get any sort of restitution, right? These companies have impunity, and this would just add to the impunity that they have. Right? So young people are just being like, fuck it, I just won't get insurance. You guys aren't going to pay it out anyways. And as a result, the pool of insured people is shrinking, especially considering the Republicans got rid of the individual mandate, which is a legal requirement that everybody have insurance. Again, shit-ass price control. Yeah, if you ever wanted an additional explanation as to why young people don't leave the house anymore. If you get a cold, you're fucked, basically. Or if you get anything worse than a cold, which can, a cold can just be like, you stay at home, you have a bowl of honey at the ready on standby for a few days, and then you're good. That's shrinking the pool, which means that even the people who do have insurance are seeing their costs increase anyways because the pool is shrinking. Add on top of that insurance companies are increasing on top of that just because they can. These increases that are due to like market forces where the margins might actually be slim anyways are a super convenient excuse for corporations to hide another price increase in there. So the price is increasing, outstripping the rate at which the pool is diminishing. On top of that, the ACA subsidies went away, which corporations used as an excuse to raise costs immediately. So that's double price increase just because, not like 2 times, but the companies increase the price and then increase the price again just because. Now, with the ACA subsidies gone, that's an additional market force that is no longer present. More deference to the free market. Prices are going to increase again. And that's another opportunity for corporations to hide another price increase in there, which means 3 to 4 times premium increase will not be uncommon. Like your insurance premiums per month will be 3 to 4 times more expensive for the people that do still have insurance, even through the ACA marketplace, which is supposed to be where you go to get insurance that's like much lower cost. So yeah, people just aren't getting insurance. And because of that, these are contradictions of a subsystem within a broader system. These contradictions are sharpening. The flaws and the problems are getting worse because they are festering and going unaddressed. When these subsidies run out, the rate at which things get worse is going to increase exponentially at such a rate that the impending crisis is going to be literally unavoidable. And because it is a specific issue, pointed issue, insurance, healthcare coverage that people suffer from very acutely so, it is going to bring stuff like Medicare for All back in the discourse. And I feel like that's going to be an added political crisis on top of the healthcare crisis, because as we know, both parties fucking hate the idea of a healthcare system that doesn't give unlimited money to insurance companies all the time. Yeah, it is actually like, the boiling the frog. Think of it this way. Again, this is like Marxian dialectics, but I'm applying it to a subsystem here, the American insurance system. Things are slowly getting worse. You're the frog that's boiling. But things are getting worse slow enough that you don't really feel it. You can tell that things are worse now than they were however many years ago. But day to day things remain pretty much the same, week to week, maybe even month to month, right? You know, because it's a slow burn. When the acceleration of that turns up, when you start boiling a lot faster, you start to feel it and your brain starts to like feel that urgency. Like, okay, this something needs to be done about this now. You know? So that's where the accelerationist angle comes from. Part of me believes, is that true about frogs anyway? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe some sick fuck in the Middle Ages boiled a frog and they realized that you could just boil them slowly and they won't notice until they're like dead already. Or like until it's too late. Um the accelerationist angle of this is that if the American healthcare system reaches a point of crisis like this, it is going to be literally unavoidable that more transformative and more like systemic and systematic healthcare reforms will come back into the picture. Everybody probably knows about Bernie Sanders talking about Medicare for all. That's like in the modern day, it's one of the biggest political things that he's known for. That's like an essential part of his platform. And because of his advocacy for it, it became an essential part of American progressivism. The American like progressive left has adopted that as a central piece of their platforms. In fact, some states have even, I think some states actually have their own equivalent of Medicare for all. I think Michigan, one of the states in the upper Midwest, actually has a state level single payer healthcare system where you can just get healthcare from the state at no cost. Like you can just do that. Governments are just allowed to do that. I don't know if people know this, but governments are just allowed to do good things. Hey, you know this essential thing that you would die without? The government is allowed to just make that free and make you not have to pay for it. Think about like the sidewalk, the street, like regular ass infrastructure, right? Sure, you pay taxes, but you're not paying a toll to walk on the sidewalk. You don't have to pay that money out of pocket. That's handled by the government and the IRS when you pay taxes to them, right? You get to enjoy all that shit for free. That came free with your living in a society, provided you pay taxes. Yeah, reality isn't a mobile game yet, except for most respects in America, in which it is. But for some things, it actually isn't, you know? So the accelerationist thinking is that this is going to be so bad. Like Mike Johnson and the Republicans are about to post such coal, like absolute coal, absolute dog shit, that the American healthcare system might be wrenched to reform by the worst crisis it's ever seen. And that's not to say that the state of the American health system will be as bad as it was pre-ACA, but the shock will be much bigger. Pre-Affordable Care Act, before 2000, what was it, 9, 10? Something like that. I think it was early 2010s. No, it would have been 2012 or 13 because of like Romney Care and stuff. Before that, there was no Affordable Care Act. You could be denied care for pre-existing conditions. It was the fucking Wild West of nobody could afford health expenses and shit. But that wasn't like a drastic shock from some previous established state of things. That was part of a slow boil. It had slowly been getting worse over time. There used to be public hospitals in America. We used to have something resembling a public option in this country, and we got rid of it. But we didn't get rid of it all at once. We got rid of it slowly over the course of the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s. And then there all of a sudden, not all of a sudden actually, after several decades, there were no more public hospitals, there was no more public health care. Everything was privatized. But because it didn't happen in one big shock, it wasn't considered a crisis. Now, this is a much smaller change, but it's happening way more quickly. The fall off is a lot bigger, and it's going to hurt a lot worse. And that sort of like turning up the boiler that much, that quickly, like even if it's, less than the other time, because you did it slowly the other time, but you're doing it quickly now, people are going to react now. That might be what this bill is trying to address, basically making the fall off less bad, but still giving insurance companies plenty of room to administer that fall off slowly over time. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think I've made the point. This is a crisis, which is bad, but this crisis could lead to like Medicare for all and single payer healthcare, which would be good if that happened. We're seeing a joke in a cyberpunk show where an ambulance says, "Do you have a prescription?" They said no, and they dragged away. That's like only slightly different from what happens in America. In America, it costs thousands of dollars to ride in an ambulance, but they don't ask you if you have like a prescription or whatever. They just hand you the bill afterwards. It's one of the few areas where like, for whatever reason, private industries are just allowed to flagrantly violate the bedrock of contract law that both parties have to consent to a contract, right? Of a financial sort. You don't need to consent for them to pick you up in an ambulance because obviously you could potentially be in a life-threatening situation. You would die otherwise. But then companies take advantage of that to say, okay, well, now you have, by virtue of being in this life-endangering situation, you have entered into this contract state where, since you're riding in our ambulance, we get to charge you $3,000. That's why fire departments have ambulances now. Have you noticed this? In America, the fire department sends out an ambulance. Hospitals have ambulances, but those are private. It does not cost money to ride in the ambulance of the fire department. Fire and rescue, that's why they have ambulances. And that's why a lot of paramedics are actually employed by the fire department and not by hospitals. There are paramedics that work at hospitals, but there are also paramedics that work for the fire department. So when you call 911, it's somebody that isn't going to charge you $10,000 for saving you from like a heart attack or something. Cyberpunk type shit, indeed. Nonetheless, the absolute state of American healthcare I truly do hope that they're not able to sort of smooth over the damage. For the record, when I talk about like smoothing over or papering over a fundamentally broken system or like massive economic damage, this is what I mean, where the Republicans are going to attempt to do the bare minimum Band-Aid fix to get people to stop paying attention to the problem, not even to address anything about the problem. In fact, this doubles down on the things that are problems in the American healthcare system, the dominance of private industry, for-profit industry in the health sector, and the degree to which people's healthcare is tied to their place of employment. Literally, if you lose your job, you lose your ability to get healthcare. Sparkling Image Car Wash, welcome back. We are reading an article from The Hill because it turns out the ACA subsidies are fucking gonzo after all. Turns out I might have jumped the gun with that other segment about the Republicans accidentally just doing the ACA subsidies again. What they realized, I guess, was, well, we got to do something, but we don't want to actually bring back the ACA subsidies because that reduced costs too much. And also it had like Obama's name next to it. So it's not good. Just calling this video, oops, never mind. Nah. Yeah, we can't make it too affordable. How else are the poor's gonna be kept in line? And how else is money gonna keep flowing into the insurance companies? You know? We got rid of the subsidies. Now we have to make the American people subsidize it out of their own pockets. Or some shit like that, basically. Yeah, I think I've said all I can say. American healthcare system sucks. It's about to suck worse. Cut the segment. That was initially born of a wild goose chase for me trying to find this one, like, oh, here it is. Okay, the Tallahassee Democrat actually has it. I was trying to find the ad for this Republican who is an actual national socialist, like Hitler-style national social democracy shit. I want to actually watch this ad from James Fishback. He is running for governor. Since Ron DeSantis is term limited in the state of Florida, he's served his 2 terms, I think. Yeah, he's been governor since 2018 or 2019. I think he was elected in 18, sworn in 19. And now he's term limited, so there's going to be a governor's race. And this guy is running as a Republican. James Fishback. I'm running to succeed Ron DeSantis as Florida's next Republican governor to make life more affordable for you and your family. I didn't mean to open that. I'll stop the H-1B scam, tell Blackstone they can't buy our homes, cancel AI data centers, and abolish property taxes. Stop doing that.
My name is
That's loud. So I want to watch this first, then we'll dig in. Tallahassee Democrat, what is your problem? Why are news sites like this? I fucking hate the news media. The media is the enemy of the people. Hold on, I'm gonna try to find like a 12-foot ladder thing or whatever. Uh-oh. One of those cheap viewer scam things. Hello, Kayla the Furry. Welcome back. Here, hold on. 12-foot IO alternative. URL here. Perfect. This is perfect. Okay. Got back to the article. So, okay, this doesn't contain the link, so we're going to watch this ad first for James Fishback, candidate for governor in the state of Florida on the Republican ticket. Then we're going to dig in, and I'm going to explain what's what with this guy. Be on alert. Apparently, fentanyl equals same power as a nuke, according to Trump. That's true. 1 trillion ads, many such cases. Anyways, he says, I will stop the H-1B scam, referring to H-1B visas, tell Blackstone they can't buy our homes, cancel AI data centers, and abolish property taxes. This has been popular with Republicans as of late. But let's watch this ad.
My name is James Fishback, and I'm running to succeed Ron DeSantis as Florida's next Republican governor. I'm running for Florida governor so I can make life more affordable for you and your family. Easier to afford groceries, to buy a home, to raise a family, and when it's all said and done, to retire with dignity. I'll do that by stopping the H-1B scam so our workers, especially our college grads, can get jobs again.
So you see what kind of angle this guy's going for thus far. For the rich people, yes, but I'll get to that in a second. So far, the only thing he's like said is H-1B visas.
I'll tell Blackstone, Airbnb, and foreign investors that no, in Florida, you can't buy our homes because our homes are for families. And I'll stop the construction of any AI data center that threatens to raise our electricity bills or poison our water supply. And I'll completely and totally eliminate property taxes for every Florida resident, because in America, you don't rent your home from the government.
Of course it's Florida, yeah. What do you say?
Don't rent your home from the government.
No, you rent it from the bank. That's how a mortgage works.
You own it, free and clear. Now,
finally, eco-fascism? Yeah, actually.
Nowadays, not all Republicans are the same. If a Republican politician supports the H-1B scam that fires our workers, he can't be our next governor. If he goes out and supports the building of AI data centers that threaten our electric bills and our water supply, he can't be our next governor.
So he has actually said a couple of things that he would be for. Things that are politically actionable. What's the rest of this? It's mostly just him talking. Okay.
Data centers that threaten our electric bills and our water supply, he can't be our next governor. And if he goes to Congress and does nothing for us but makes millions of dollars trading stocks for himself, he can't be our next governor. Congressman Byron Donalds can't be our next governor because he won't fight for Florida like Ron DeSantis has.
I suppose Byron Donalds is also running for the governor of Florida. I'm not cued in on like the details of the state race, but I think that's probably the reason he's calling out Byron Donalds specifically.
I'll fight to preserve Governor DeSantis' wins by keeping Florida free from DEI, radical transgenderism, Soros-backed prosecutors.
There's the other shoe. And insofar as the other shoe hadn't dropped yet from the first part, but this is what the Republican Party is going to look like from the younger wing. If you go to this guy's profile, there you go. Him talking to a groyper. In fact, the groyper is like more visible than he is. Like his face is turned away. Obviously, from like a media and messaging perspective, this is a well-crafted campaign ad. This is well-crafted campaign materials. In fact, it is very clear that Republicans, this guy being one of them, have learned the right lessons from Mamdani. Democrats learned the wrong lessons, and we've seen what that looked like. Remember that that nonprofit guy who was saying a whole lot of nothing except for, yeah, we should funnel this into the private sector or whatever, with my nonprofit personally. And, you know, I'm young and that's my qualification. That's what the Democrats did with that. The Republicans, meanwhile, said, okay, so we do need somebody young, but we need like a policy wonk. We need somebody who understands a little bit more about like what people want to hear in terms of the political actions you will take, and not just the sort of platitudes still regarding affordability. Obviously, because it's a campaign ad, it's going to contain those platitudes, right? That's how political campaigning works. But these things are actual positions, you know? Gatekeeping large investment firms, that's a thing. That is a political position, like out of buying homes. Getting rid of H-1B visas, that is a political position. Canceling the construction of data centers, that is a political position. Abolishing property taxes, that is a political position. You know? Yeah, it stands to reason. Liberals believe in horseshoe theory, which means that like if you care about something, that means you're literally an extremist. And the reasonable moderates should be the ones running the country because they're sufficiently rationally detached from caring about anything. Yeah, you can see. So, Caitlin Bennett, this is the lady that shit herself, by the way. That's what she's known for. Talking with James Fishback here. As I said, the new face of the Republican Party is this guy and others like him that are going to be policy wonks. And if you noticed, are as extreme or more than the previous crop of Republicans because he is more inclined to state actual political positions and not just leave it at platitudes. The sort of advocacy for like, oh, I'll protect the state from DEI. And it's funny you should say that. I'll get to that in a second. Like protecting the state from DEI and like transgender ideology or whatever, has a little bit more of a threat behind it, because they actually care probably enough to act on that front. Whereas a lot of Republicans prior to this guy would have just been vice signaling. You know, the typical neocons who largely just want to keep everything the same. They just, again, kind of disinterested, virtue signaling versus vice signaling, right? And the progressives take things beyond virtue signaling. People like this would take it beyond vice signaling. You know, these are Republicans that are not like do-nothings, basically. So sometimes they'll say things that sound similar, but they'll mean it. But it's funny that you should say he is looks like a tech bro, because he is. This man is a fucking tech CEO. Who is James Fishback? Doge dividend creator, runs for Florida governor. I have to remember not to click anything because this is the Tallahassee Democrat, which is an affiliate of USA Today, I think. Fascism was knocking, America answered the door. Fascism was knocking in Florida, answered the door. No, fuck your AI-assisted summary. Florida gubernatorial race just got a little more crowded. On Monday, the 24th of November, James Fishback announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination to replace outgoing Governor DeSantis in the 2026 election. Fishback, a 30-year-old investment firm CEO who has never held political office, vowed in a video posted to Twitter ahead of his public announcement in Tallahassee to carry on DeSantis' legacy in a way he said the current frontrunner, U.S. Representative Byron Donalds, won't. Okay, so Byron Donalds is running for governor. I'll fight to preserve Governor DeSantis wins by keeping Florida free from DEI, radical transgenderism, Soros-backed prosecutors, child predators, voter fraud, and the millions of illegals that invaded our country on Kamala Harris' watch. Notably, he's invoking Kamala Harris and not Joe Biden because nobody gives a shit about Joe Biden anymore. Who is James Fishback? If Floridians outside Madison know him at all, yeah, I think he's from the Panhandle. He mentions the Panhandle either in this ad or another ad. But I didn't watch the full ad. I watched it just enough to get like to the part where the other shoe really drops. It's because he gained momentary fame as the person who suggested to mega billionaire Elon Musk and Donald Trump that they should issue Doge dividends. $5,000 payments to working Americans funded by all the money Musk's Doge would save. After the idea went viral on social media and both Musk and Trump seemed to sign on, Fishback made numerous media appearances to pitch it before Musk left the White House, and then the idea faded. So obviously nothing actually happened from this. He dropped out of Georgetown to start his own hedge fund and worked as a consultant to the New York fund Greenlight Capital before joining the firm in 2021. He worked for 2.5 years at Greenlight, but left to form his own company, Azoria Partners LLC. Literally a capitalist. It's the face of fascism, you know? Oh, great. He's even alleged to have committed fraud, which is pretty part and parcel, I would say. That's all. Those are the major points of interest, I think. Which is that he's a right-wing populist who's like, okay, so obviously the affordability message is popular, and he actually says something that would help if implemented. Like, companies like Blackstone buying up houses and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a thing. Do I believe that he's actually going to do anything about this? Fuck no. He's a tech bro. He's literally one of these people. Yeah, I'll stop Blackstone from buying up all your houses and stuff. Vote for me. I'm a tech bro, a CEO, former Doge like employee, consultant, whatever, and multimillionaire. You know? Literally the same type of shit that the Nazis did. Hold on, let me bust out the fucking political cartoon again. Where is it? I saved a I saved a picture of it. I think. Let me find it. God, is it not here? God damn it. Come on. Damn it. Don't tell me it's in video editing. Sorry, it's gonna take a bit because my folders are so fucking crowded. Use it for a YouTube thumbnail? Yeah, I saved the file to my computer to actually use it for that purpose, but now I can't find the file because my folders are really fucking crowded with a bunch of stuff because of the videos that I edit. I'm gonna have to clear out these folders at some point. Son of a bitch. Here it is. I don't know why it's in this folder. Yeah, this is a political cartoon by Jacobus Elson. He's doing the meme. He's doing the bit. At that point, just Google it. I couldn't remember the name of the guy either. I'm actually gonna copy this and just put it in this folder, like so I can find it more easily. He's doing the meme, the American version of this meme, where like you don't say that you're a socialist, but you talk all about affordability just enough to like convince the lowest common denominator, right? And then obviously he had been making the rounds on news shows back in 2021, not 2021, earlier this year. He'd been talking about the Doge dividends. I was thinking of like January of this year, February of this year. And he was doing this shtick. So on the campaign, he does this. On news stations, when he's talking to other such capitalists, he does this. Same shit. Same shit. There's a non-zero number of lefties who might fall for something like this, and they deserve like a rhetorical slap in the face real quick, but like the real reason I point to this is that this is the new, even more radical face of the Republican Party, because at this point, it's not just vice signaling anymore. These people are the Groypers and the ideological ultra-nationalists. People like this are ideologically driven in some part, at the very least. they're doubling down on the populism again in an attempt to like maintain political relevance. And when I say they, I mean the right, the right wing. You know? And this is very much, this is like a post Mamdani thing where we've got Mamdani and some other like local progressives as the sort of spearhead of the progressive left movement. I wouldn't say ideologically, I'd say economically. No, you should say ideologically, because Republicans are not ideologically motivated, right? When I say ideologically motivated, understand Byron Donalds, the people he talks about, are grifters who don't believe anything. They are not ideologically motivated. Their ideology, quote unquote, is I should have money and I should be a social media influencer. This person is ideologically motivated in the sense that they will believe the things they say. More so than previous Republicans, like the older generation of Republicans, your Rick Scotts, your Byron Donalds. And if we're seeing this now in America, it's probably going to pop up elsewhere as well. But it might be some time before that. And because this guy seems to be ideologically motivated, seems to believe what he's talking about, and like does the thing, where he goes out and like actually talks to people. Believe it or not, politicians used to actually do that. That used to be a normal thing for politicians to do. He might believe in his positions hard enough to basically destroy the whole state over it. Not destroy the state in the way that a grifter would, where they are keeping the institutions just intact enough to line their pockets and to sort of beef up their portfolio and whatever else, right? I mean, like, destroy the institutions to remold the state. Yeah, here he is. Here he is on Fox and CNN and other news networks. Check this out.
Donalds, I'm not a politician. I'm an investor and a businessman. I stood up to Wall Street, I sued the Federal Reserve, and I filed a landmark brief with the Supreme Court defending President Trump's right to fire corrupt federal officials. I started Incubate Debate, a free high school debate league for thousands of kids across Florida so they could learn how to debate.
Oh yeah, he also, I think earlier he talks about how he wants to invest in education, which is a rare sight for Republicans, but that's where kind of like my interest was piqued, and I was like, okay, something more is going on here. Because no Republican has ever said they want to invest money in education without qualifying that for charter school programs. And what he's doing is essentially the Charlie Kirk free speech bit for the most part. At least it seems like, from like, oh yeah, this high school debate club.
Free high school debate league for thousands of kids across Florida so they could learn how to debate, discuss, and grow as Americans.
Essentially, this guy's a Nazi debate bro.
I love our state. I am a fourth-generation Floridian. My great-grandfather fought in World War I and then owned a small hotel on Fort Lauderdale Beach. My grandfather fought in World War II and ran 750 head of cattle in Okeechobee.
Okay. You say much else here? Great. Some Christian identity shit. The classic, gesturing to Confederate monuments. Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can find the part where he says he wants to invest in education. I think it's like there's a picture of him with some like people that look like they're high school age, maybe,
to retire
or like college age.
These scams so our workers, especially our college grads, can get jobs again.
No, okay, it was not this part.
Apply. He can't be our next governor, and if he goes to Congress.
Saw this part already. No, he might not mention it in this ad particularly. Anyways, that's enough of me getting distracted. Yeah, that's that. Uh, the America First, the Nick Fuentes types are the new face of the Republican Party, and they are taking their cues from Zoran Mamdani and leaning into the populism. Where Democrats simply tried to co-opt the aesthetic of Zoran Mamdani's social media presence to try to reel people back into their pre-existing agenda that nobody liked or care about. The Republicans seem to actually be willing to emphasize their different parts of their existing agenda and even change their agenda to a certain extent to try to accommodate the more populist urges of the American people, varying from whatever segment of that population is relevant, right? Oh yeah, I think there was a tweet of his where he literally just said, "Make the trains run on time." Like, he posted that to Twitter. Obviously, he didn't say that in a campaign ad, but it was like a companion piece to one of his other campaign ads. I think that was the campaign ad where he said "Oh, I want to invest in education and stuff too." But the Twitter post read, "I'm running to make the trains run on time." And one of the things was he wanted to bring Amtrak back to Florida. He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to invest in public transit and education as governor. And then, by the way, I also hate H-1B visas and I hate queer people," which is actually much closer to classical fascism and Nazi ideology from the 20th century than modern neoliberal fascism, which hates minorities, but offers no sort of veneer of social democracy. With people like this, you actually have to be discerning enough to know that their position as a capitalist means that they are probably lying to you about wanting to invest in public services. Again, it's the meme, socialist German party, national German party type shit. Yeah, cut the segment if that ends up being a segment. I don't know that it will be, though. To be honest, I'm not exactly sold on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Again, I said this last time. I'm not 100% sold on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday stream schedule, but doing the every other day stream schedule is just so awkward. Especially from the perspective of streaming and maintaining a YouTube presence. Bleh. Annoying. Oh yeah, meanwhile, in juxtaposition to that campaign, which seems to actually be run pretty competently with some pretty good messaging instincts to try to reel people in, to build a coalition, the Democrats, in contrast, are running the worst campaign I've ever seen with Jasmine Crockett. She is running for Senate from the state of Texas, U.S. Senate, not state Senate, U.S. Senate. And she's going to be part of a primary cycle against James Tallarico, who's currently a state lawmaker who's running for Senate, same Senate seat. They're going to be facing off against each other in the primary. And James Tallarico isn't the same as a progressive firebrand, but he seems to actually be sort of a democratic analog to people like what's his name? Fishback. where Tallarico clearly took some correct lessons from Zoran Mamdani's campaign and the current crop of progressives on the left, where it's not just about the aesthetic, right? In fact, his aesthetic is quite a bit different than Zoran Mamdani. His style of interacting with social media and with online media in general is very different than Zoran Mamdani, and he's not using as a qualification that he's young, but what he is using are credentials that sort of construct for him a populist identity. The fact that he used to be a middle school teacher, which automatically makes me have a lot of respect for him. The fact that he was a teacher, and the fact that I think he is theologically well educated. He's I think he's actually a Baptist minister. And again, he was talking about affordability, and he mentioned that there is like a massive divide between the working people of Texas and the billionaires who are making everything worse, right? To my knowledge, he hasn't mentioned that many policies in the affirmative, apart from the fact that he wants to not cut social services, which is already more than I can say for Jasmine Crockett's campaign. She has said nothing of the sort. Nonetheless, as I mentioned in the Discord, it's like an odd number of campaign-related things are happening, given that it's 2025. I guess 2026 is right around the corner, which is when the midterm elections start getting heated up. Here, let me actually... James Tallarico for a second. James Tallarico actually did a Jubilee panel. He did a surrounded debate panel on Jubilee. That might be worth taking a look at. Meet James while I'm running events, volunteer, store. Maybe this? I don't know. It is still pretty early. Maybe that's why, but yeah, I think this is a transcript actually of the video where he's standing on top of like a table, or I think he's standing on top of a table here, and you can see this is from the rust on this roof and like the rust on this car. This is not a particularly wealthy area. He's talking to people. There's something broken in America. Our economy is broken. Our politics are broken. Even our relationships with each other feel broken. That's because the most powerful people in the world want it that way. Are you starting to sound like me? The biggest divide in this country is not left versus right. It is top versus bottom. Billionaires want us looking left and right at each other instead of looking up at them. The people at the top work so hard to keep us angry and divided because our unity is a threat to their wealth and power. So their cable news networks and their social media algorithms tear us apart. They divide us by party, by race, by gender, by religion, so we don't notice they're defunding our schools, gutting our healthcare, and cutting taxes for themselves and their rich friends. It's the oldest strategy in the world. Divide and conquer, but we will not be conquered. We're underdogs in this fight. We're going up against these billionaire mega donors and their puppet politicians. We're going up against a rigged system, and we're going up against a lot of money. But I'm a former middle school teacher, and I don't scare easily. And Texans don't scare easily. My granddad was a Baptist preacher. Okay, so his granddad was a Baptist preacher. He's not a preacher, I don't think. In South Texas, he taught me that we follow a barefoot rabbi who gave us 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor. Because there is no love of God without love of neighbor. He's invoking a lot of the religious language here. This plays well, again, to a Southern audience. Every single person bears the image of the sacred. Every single person is holy, not just the neighbors who look like me or pray like me or vote like me. These billionaires want to keep us from seeing all that we have in common. They want to keep us from realizing there's far more that unites us than divides us, because once we do, we'll come together across party, across race, across gender, across religion to fix what's broken in our country and take back power for ourselves and our communities. 2,000 years ago, when the powerful few rigged the system, that barefoot rabbi walked into the seat of power and flipped over the tables of injustice. To those who love our country, to those who love our neighbors, it's time to start flipping tables. It brings to mind, honestly, the Christian socialists of the 20th century. Man, history is just a fucking loop on repeat, you know? You have the Gilded Age and politicians that don't give a shit and like are complete grifters and just in it for the bag and get fat off of their political careers, you know, which then gives rise to a wave of radical populism, both left and right. On the right, you have fascism. On the left, you have socialism. This same thing was happening exactly 100 years ago, I promise you. People mostly agree, historians mostly agree, the period that we call the Gilded Age ended right about the time that the Great Depression was fixing to happen. You know, not as the Great Depression was happening, but like as it was fixing to happen, like a little bit before. This lines up with that, like, actually pretty well, where the ideas of socialism and fascism start becoming much more popular, and the sort of established political order of like liberalism that safeguards the interests of robber barons incessantly starts to become a lot less popular, but politicians don't care because they don't believe in anything. There are a lot of parallels. People are fascinating. People are fascinating. I agree. Hopefully, Tallarico develops a more fleshed out platform. I feel like you could. Well, there's a lot of stuff to do in Texas. I feel like you could make a pretty good case for what kind of casework you're going to focus on in the state itself, what you would do in the federal legislature. The funny thing about federal like legislative officials is that they are still agents in state politics. So like they do casework for people that need help navigating through these like bureaucratic neoliberal nightmares of systems and whatever. And a lot of them actually have an impact on state level politics, which means that like senators have power even when they could be like the only senator from their party in the Senate. Like they could be independent or a Green Party senator or whatever, but they have power at the state level. So I feel like there's a lot of room for him to say, yeah, we're going to focus on casework regarding such and such. I'm going to be working with other state lawmakers and politicians in Texas for such and such, for like, I don't know, urbanization projects, public transit, unions, community organizations being stronger and more available to more people and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, urban renewal programs in Texas and stuff like that. And obviously, I think he's a better candidate than Jasmine Crockett. Because Jasmine Crockett has just all been like mostly talking about herself, where this is obviously still all like platitudes for the most part. But he's gesturing to the people and the sort of political psychology of Texas, right? Being a very southern state and being very deeply entwined with like the church and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's can I see the chapters? I can see the chapters. Okay, never mind. It seems like this I was thinking about maybe reacting to the Jubilee Surrounded, but it's mostly stuff that he already talked about in like the why I'm running or whatever. And because it's Jubilee, you know that they get the dumbest fucks on planet Earth for this, who are either on the payroll or like authentically really stupid to farm engagement online. And yeah, no, I don't think the crazy people said anything particularly interesting. It would just be me suffering, which I know is good content, but I really do not feel like suffering today. Like the here, look, I'll show you guys. Intro. Claim number 1. Shoutouts to Jubilee for this typo. Cuts to healthcare and food assistance hurts all of us. This surrounded format, by the way, is designed for somebody to come up here and say, no, actually, let's argue about it. Claim number 2, immigrants make America stronger and richer. Claim number 3, your vote matters in 2026. Claim number 4, the biggest divide in our politics is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. And then undecided voter claim. Oh, so somebody else makes this claim. Interesting. No matter how much gun violence happens within the state of Texas, there will never be a gun ban or gun reform. That one's probably true. But yeah, like, do you think anything interesting is going to come out of any of these chapters? Cuts to healthcare and food assistance hurt all of us. Tautological statement. Cuts to things that help all of us will hurt all of us. And then somebody's going to be like, no, well, I don't have food stamps, so I don't care if people starve to death for not having food stamps. Like, it's the type of shit where you would just hit them over the head with a rock, and that's how you win the argument. I just mean crazy people being crazy. Well, I don't feel like dealing with that today. Claim number 2, immigrants make America stronger and richer. Again, like, this is you've seen them, you've seen one, you've seen them all. This is the same kind of shit that happened that was like talked about on the Sam Seder debate panel on Jubilee, with the exception of your vote matters in 2026, which is going to include some dumb fuck doomering about like, my vote doesn't matter. I'm just going to stay home and not participate in society. Like, my brother in Christ, you are part of the problem. You know? I'm not reacting to another Jubilee Surrounded segment. It's just going to be me saying this person's a Republican, this person just hates immigrants and doesn't care what happens to Texas, this person's psychotic, these people are not normal. Like, yeah, we all know exactly what we're going to see already, so why do I bother? You know? God, it feels like it's hard for me to be. Thank fuck for me enjoying flexing my critical thinking skills and doing political analysis, because in moments like this, it is very fucking difficult for me to be an entertainer above all else. You know? Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, to what I mentioned about Tallarico at the beginning is I think he has the potential to be like a counter to some of the far right populists, the new crop of far right populists that are popping up, that are like literal Nazis and shit. I guess if we're approaching this from a dialectical perspective, then for once it seems that the left is the thesis and the right is the antithesis. Or actually, no. The right was still the thesis, and then they're going back and forth between thesis and antithesis. The local level, like right-wing populism in politics actually came first in the early 2020s, 2010s, 2020s, especially immediately post-COVID with all these like insane school board elections and like local Republican politicians who hopped on the Republican bandwagon of like get woke out of the schools or whatever, which really just meant like start banning a shit ton of books. and things like that. And implement like mandatory disclosures that teachers have to tell parents that the kids confided in them about like abuse at home, just because fuck them kids, I guess, you know? And then the left wing populism was like a response to that, or came after that. I wouldn't say it was a response to, but speaking of the previous crop of the Democratic and Republican parties, they are having a mid-off right now. So, Kamala Harris said that she was going to endorse some people in the 2026 elections to try to wedge her way into like another presidential race in the future. And here we have, not to be outdone in the department of sandbagging your party's electoral chances, Elon Musk reportedly going to do the same for the GOP, except instead of just endorsements, it's going to most likely be funding. Take a look at this. Musk diving into 2026 midterms for the GOP. Remember, he did this in 2024 as well. And he tried to do it in 25 and it backfired massively. So we literally, this is like a race to the bottom. The political parties here seem to be having a contest for who can throw the election harder. Fuck you, Axios. I'm not subscribing. You know what? We're taking this shit back to the 12-foot ladder alternative. Thank you. Oh. Captcha test. There we go. Very good. Now that we have access to this article, very good. Elon Musk has begun funding the GOP's House and Senate campaigns for the 2026 midterms, an indication his relationship with President Trump has thawed since their messy breakup earlier this year. They some messy bitches in the Republican Party. Musk, who threatened to launch a third party and support challengers to Republican incumbents during his dispute with Trump, is now firmly back in the GOP's camp. Yeah, because these people are fail sons who can never accomplish anything. The tech billionaire recently cut big checks to help Republicans win congressional races next year, and indicated he'd give more throughout the 2026 cycle. Two sources with knowledge of the situation tell Axios. Musk's donation amounts won't be disclosed publicly until campaign finance reports are released next month. But his support could be a huge boost for Trump's Republicans next year as they try to stop Democrats from reclaiming power in Congress, particularly the House. Musk, the world's richest person, was the biggest donor in the 2024 campaign, giving a mind-boggling $291.5 million, the vast majority to boost Trump's re-election effort. Yeah, Trump's campaign was basically like entirely funded by Elon Musk. That he bought the presidency, which is insane. Musk's latest donations came after he had dinner last month with Vice President Vance, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Taylor Budowich, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff who's still wired into the administration. Vance, who's close to Musk, helped organize the dinner at the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory. Jared Birchall, a low-profile Musk lieutenant who plays a key role in managing Musk's political giving, was also present. After the 2024 election, Trump invited Musk into the administration to oversee Doge, which replaced they used to replace the inspectors general. This was purely a way for them to destroy the government's ability to address waste, fraud, and abuse. They used that classic projection. They used waste, fraud, and abuse as the argument to create Doge, but in so doing, they destroyed the inspectors general, who were actually phenomenally good at their job of rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse from federal programs, to the extent that they were given the resources to do so. The few instances of them not being able to do so are cases where politicians or very well-connected people commit like widespread welfare fraud or something like that. You know, where you had, I think, Rick Scott committing millions and millions of dollars of fraud in Medicare. I think Aaron Rodgers did the same, or not Aaron Rodgers. Was it Aaron Rodgers? It was either Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre. One of the former Green Bay Packers quarterbacks was like busted for Medicaid fraud or something like that. Yeah, it like Doge was created to ostensibly, stop waste, fraud, and abuse, but the real reason that it existed is to enable such waste, fraud, and abuse to happen so that money can be more efficiently funneled from your pockets through the tax system and into the coffers of oligarchs and to the portfolios of oligarchs, shareholders, and the like. You know? After Musk departed the administration in May, he and Trump had a bitter falling out. Musk was angered by, among other things, Trump's decision to withdraw the nomination of Musk ally Jared Isaacman to lead NASA. Okay. Musk called Trump's big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination because of its high cost, highlighted Trump's ties to the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and threatened to form what he called the American Party to run his favored candidates for Congress. South African billionaire threatens to start the America Party. Legitimately reads like a bad comedy bit. Trump called Musk crazy and said he was disappointed in him. I think he had a like more extended crash out than that, but yeah. Both of them had a much more extended crash out than what Axios is showing, but you know. Musk later acknowledged regret over some of his remarks. Oh yeah, they made up when Charlie Kirk was killed because they were like, okay, we got to reconsolidate so that we can do the Reichstag bit, which they, funnily enough, have really not been successful in doing. They wanted Charlie Kirk to be the Reichstag fire so bad, but he's just not, because nobody cared about Charlie Kirk. He was a truly dime a dozen conservative propagandist, subject to that right-wing media slop phenomenon that I talked about, that in the aggregate, they have a large cultural impact because of their political views being propagated, but individually, they are so devoid of personality that they also have zero cultural impact at the same time. Yeah, Musk is just, as Axios is saying, Musk has basically just been reabsorbed into the traditional, like, um, Republican donor structure. So, anyways, Axios just outlining Trump and Musk have kissed and made up, and now Musk is going to pump tons of money into the 2026 midterms, which I'm almost positive is not going to help the Republicans as much as he thinks it will. Although it's probably not going to be as bad as when he was directing a lot of this shit himself from inside the White House. Elections do be coming up. So yeah, party's having a mid-off. You got Elon Musk for the Republicans, and then the Democrats somehow think that Kamala Harris has any sort of star power to galvanize the base. And they're both gonna. It looks like they're both gonna be trying to lose 2026 as hard as they can, which is really funny. They're like, that was just a fluke. Yeah, it was like they'll like they're saying like, I'll fucking do it again. Fucking Billy Mays, but I'm not done yet. You know? Hi, Billy Mays here with a special offer. Vote for Republicans and you get absolutely nothing. Type shit. That was all I had for today. I know that more stuff happened, but you know, that's why I ask like people to post links for stuff. But honestly, I feel like I'm just the past couple of days. I feel like I just haven't been feeling the live streams. I haven't been feeling it. I don't rightly know why. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for why I'm just not feeling it. I was gonna write some Christmas cards. Maybe I should just get back to doing that. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Okay. Let me find somebody to raid. It is 3:30, so I'm ending stream on time, but started stream late, so it's like much shorter than usual. Liv Agar is live. Maybe let's raid Liv Agar. Right? Spelled with an underscore, right? No, it's just that. Okay, okay. Just one word. I'll see y'all next time. I'll try to be back tomorrow. Dennis Paco, hello. I'm so sorry you catch me just at the end of stream. I'll be back tomorrow, but yeah, might be. Come back tomorrow. You're gonna be in for some shit. We'll see how this new schedule does for me. I'm not feeling the like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday back to back. I don't know how that's gonna play into all that, but you know, see you then. Again, sorry you joined right at the end of stream. Enjoy Liv Agar.